Coming up on your favorite podcast. Week 3 of the NFL is in the books, and we got to talk about who might be the first coach fired. It's usually right around now we start to think that way, and Ryan's got some ideas on who it might be. We also get into some of the interesting trends of the league. What about our rookie quarterbacks this year? The Chiefs have lost 2 straight games. That's a concern, and Kirk Cousins is playing really well. So we got a lot to talk about on this edition of the podcast, plus get into our latest rankings and the Elimination Chamber. One team looking to make an obvious splash there this week. All that and so much more this week on the podcast.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out.
Hey, it's the Tim Anderson Podcast. I'm Tim. That's my buddy Ryan, who I've seen a lot of today.
Pulling double duty.
Double duty. Just a lot of stuff going on here today. We're very busy here at the podcast. And also joining us, another very busy guy, is the coach, the owner. He's Zach Neighbor. Hey, Zach.
Hey, Tim. I'm Ryan.
Always good to have the guys together, because if these two are here, that only means one thing, football talk. We're going to get into week 3 of the season that happened last week, and we've started to find a little groove here recording on a Thursday night with the Thursday night game going on at the same time. And Trevor Lawrence looking like maybe starting to figure some things out.
He looks good tonight. He just hit LaViscus with the deep one, which I'm excited to see. I needed that.
Yeah, it was a great throw and catch for sure.
We were just thinking about this today, Zach. Ryan and I were talking about kind of the quarterback's maturation, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But all you were looking for through the first 3 weeks were flashes, right? We're just looking for flashes of that greatness, so that we kind of look to see. And maybe with Lawrence, we're starting to maybe see that potentially. I mean, we all believe he's going to be all right, but we needed to see it on film a little bit. We're starting to see it now, right, Zach?
Well, he's got to limit the turnovers. That's the biggest thing. He's been turning the ball over like crazy, and you can't do that in the NFL.
It's true. And, maybe Herb is, I'm not ready to say Herb's figured it out as a coach yet, but at least tonight, they seem to have had a strong game plan offensively, defensively. We'll see how that goes. Ryan, this brings me, week 3, I wanted to open it with this conversation. After 3 weeks, last week we pressed the panic button a little bit because of the 0-2 teams and the 2-0 teams. I think after 3 weeks, either a panic button's already been pushed or whatever, but now we got to start looking at, all right, who's the first coach getting fired? Because after week 3 last year, we were pretty convinced Bill O'Brien was getting fired. Who's the first coach fired, and when's it going to happen?
Well, I have a hard time speaking to when, but, I mean, you look around the league, and you kind of get the feeling that, I thought originally it might be David Culley, but, Matt Nagy hasn't exactly called great games for Chicago, and it feels like he's on the hot seat. I don't know for sure, but it feels like he's the guy on the hot seat right now.
It's definitely heating up for him, but I would say Joe Judge is getting there as well.
That's true. Yeah.
And we talked, I mean, they may not win a game for a while here, and then it's really going to raise some questions.
I mean, you look at that Giants schedule, there's maybe 2 games that they're going to have a chance to be favored in, and I don't know if they'll be favored in them at all.
That's concerning. As somebody who kind of liked Joe Judge, and we saw some flashes last season, concerned. Like that there's no other way to describe it. Just very concerned about that team and where they're going. And after watching what Dallas did to Philadelphia the other night, you start to think, man, maybe Dallas is good, and maybe the Giants are really bad, and they could be looking at a 2-3 win operation this year. And yeah, I don't know if it's fireable to Joe Judge this early, but maybe it is, especially when you get the reports that they booed the hell out of John Mara at the Eli Manning Hall of Fame induction or whatever it was, and he's kicking trash cans over in the back. You start to hear those kinds of things. Sounds like there's a little tumult in New York.
Look, they lost to a really bad Falcons team last week. It's a really bad loss.
They lost to a bad team and looked bad in the process, too.
Yeah.
It's not like it was tight.
Score was tight, but it wasn't that close.
Right. And when you are the owner is taking as much heat as he is taking, somebody's got to pay for it. And it's not going to be the owner. He's not going to fire himself.
That's true.
Let's just run down the list here real quick. I'm just going to read off their schedule here. Just the teams, not even home games. I don't think it matters right now. But just real quick, tell me how many games out of these you think they win. Real quick. Saints, Cowboys, Rams, Panthers, Chiefs, Raiders, Bucks, Eagles, Dolphins, Chargers, Cowboys, Eagles, Bears, Washington football team. I think maybe one or two.
Yeah, it's not looking good. And then what do you do? I mean, are they going to take a quarterback? Are they going to stick with the quarterback? I don't know. It's kind of, they're kind of in the same spot as the Jets, right? Like they have to redo the whole thing again.
Yeah, team without an identity. It's kind of the worst of all worlds right now.
The problem here too is Daniel Jones is this isn't like a guy who's in his second year. Like this is year 3. Is it year 3 or 4? It's 3, I think. And you're waiting for him to take this step forward, and he does show you moments, right? He shows you these little moments where you're like, man, that's pretty good. Like, that's not bad. But it doesn't translate to winning games at the end of the day. And I'm not saying that's all on him, because maybe he's like Sam Darnold and just needs a new place. That's very possible too. Boy, the Jags didn't get it on 4th and goal. Hate to see that. But
you guys must be ahead of me on my stream.
Yeah, I'll try to keep my stream.
He's definitely ahead of me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'll keep that on I'll keep that on the down low then. Sorry.
Herb just burned his time out here, and I was going to say they probably should kick it.
I'm just finishing up the Laviska Shenault almost fumble.
Yeah, well, who's streaming your game? Jesus H. Christ, you're a full minute and a half behind. Anyway.
Look, man, I'm doing the best I can cutting cable here.
But to me, Jones might have to go the Sam Darnold route. I don't know how you can, if they go 3-13, I don't know how you can, or 3-14 or 4-13, whatever, you name the record. I don't know how they can turn around and say, we're good with Daniel Jones. We'll bring him back next year with a new coach, new system, new everything, and everything will be fine. That's not possible.
Problem is there's not a lot of quarterback prospects, I feel like, right now.
No, not this year. I mean, if you want to just real quick, we're going to touch on the draft real quick. I mean, a lot of these guys are developmental guys. They're not going to be day one starters, especially the top guys like Spencer Rattler. You look at a guy like that. I mean, just mentally, he's not a guy you want leading your professional football team at this point.
Pulling him off the field in Oklahoma. How's that going to work?
He's just not ready. The guys that are ready aren't elite athletic talents. I mean, they don't jump off the page, but they're just kind of gutty, right? You think about a guy like Jake Haener at Fresno State. He's not a first round pick, So it's going to be a lot of running backs and defensive linemen and wide receivers again this year. So,
who's the dude from Liberty?
Malik Willis.
He's the one that, but again, that guy's not ready to start in the NFL.
We should have a conversation about that kid from St. John's getting drafted.
I don't think that'll happen because I thought the guy before it was even better, and he's still jobless.
And Tanner Morgan, boy, I'm convinced it's going to be him. Then you might as well just go ahead and draft him after that performance against Bowling Green over the weekend. He's ready right now, don't you think? Like, Jesus.
That continues to be, I think, the biggest black mark against PJ is his inability at the quarterback position. He's not recruited or developed one.
Yeah, the developing, I think, is a very fair thing because you could argue that, when he had Bateman and Johnson, but the regression has happened, right? That there's a major regression that's happened. And the thing with Jones, and I guess to bring this back to Jones, the argument you could make for Jones is both Sterling Shepard and who the other receiver. There's 2 receivers went out with hamstring injuries in the game. Galladay is, you can like him or hate him or whatever, but he didn't have the pieces on Sunday. Therefore, he didn't produce a great game. He played a pretty good game on the Thursday night against Washington. They didn't win that game. I'm not sure that's his fault. But when he has weapons, they score points. And when he doesn't have weapons, they don't score points. And Saquon missed all the year before. I guess, I don't know. But this is 2 years in a row on Joe Judge. They get off to a terrible start. Then they kind of find a little mojo in the middle. But we'll see if the mojo happens.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm not as down on Daniel Jones as I was last year. Obviously, he's still making bad turnovers and bad decisions, but his legs are there. I mean, he's starting to show a little bit of flash. You just wonder if he was in a different situation, if it would be better for him.
Is there somebody sitting on a bench right now, though, Zach, that you would rather have over Daniel Jones?
No, I guess not off the top of my head.
Not someone who's a rookie. I mean, other than rookies, I mean, you know.
Right. Unless you're talking Tyrod Taylor, is he on the bench? Or, I mean, he's hurt. You know, would you rather have Dalton?
Yeah, I don't know if I would rather have Dalton over Daniel Jones. I guess I'd rather just run it back with Daniel Jones. Same thing. Do you want Gardner Minshew? I mean, Jacoby Brissett? You know, I mean, maybe. Yeah. Maybe, but I mean.
There's not a lot out there.
I wonder if this is a situation where, Miami's the team that got thrown around for Deshaun Watson, but do you think about rolling the dice if you're the Giants on Deshaun Watson just to try and turn the franchise around a little bit and get some potential stability at the quarterback position?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility, but I don't think that's going to – I don't see the Watson stuff shaking itself out until next year.
I kind of agree with you. Although it seems like there's some steam on that with the Tua injury. Maybe that moves the other direction. Who knows? But, yeah, I kind of agree. I don't see that happening until after the season. So if it's Joe Judge, if it's not Joe Judge, it's not Matt Nagy, who else makes a case for first coach fired?
I mean, the hard part is you've got a lot of these teams that aren't very good have new coaches, right? I mean, they're first year guys. Like I think about in any other season, the Lions have played pretty well, so you can't say Dan Campbell, but Nick Sirianni, I don't think has made a real convincing case for himself yet. I think that you look at Urban Meyer and Frank Reich. Frank Reich might be a name that gets thrown out as first coach fired.
Yeah,
but
that's not going well.
But he's got the injury excuse a little bit,
Does he?
Oh, yeah, he's had some major injuries up front on his offensive line, arguably their best spot. Some injuries on defense that key guys have been getting hurt for them. So I mean it's a bit of an excuse, but we've seen coaches ride that out before where they had success when they're healthy. So I don't know. I think the quarterback was a huge misstep for them.
You proved right, Zach, on a little bit through 3 weeks anyway. You're proving right on Carson Wentz. Again, as probably the last guy on the Carson Wentz train, which I think maybe I am, it's hard to make a case. It hasn't been good for 3 weeks.
No, it hasn't. And I guess the thought that he was going to be the savior there, I think, was out of line. I wasn't buying it. I mean, the other guy who could get fired is Zim, right? If they are at 1-5, 1-6, he might be the guy who takes the axe.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think that if I would feel a lot better about that prediction if they would have lost to Seattle on Sunday. But I mean, they really came out and beat the crap out of Seattle in the second half, which is you really haven't seen that out of the Vikings in the second half of a game in a couple of years. So
yeah, I just say if they don't put some wins together, they're in trouble. And I mean, how good are the Seahawks right now? Do we know?
That's a great question because
their defense is atrocious.
They had Tennessee dead to rights 2 weeks ago at home, and they lose that game in overtime and really they play a good first half against Minnesota. They get up 17-7 and offer no resistance in the second half. That Seattle team, especially with how good that Western Division looks, they could be the worst team in that division.
I mean,
and they got the Niners and the Rams the next 2 weeks. So
I'll call back to what I said at the beginning of the season in that first preview podcast. I think this is the year that the Seahawks blow up. That they're just, especially defensively, they're not flying around. They're not covering guys. I mean, look at the Vikings had guys open all over the field on Sunday, all over the field. From the first drive until the end of the first half, I mean, they got down 17-7, but before halftime, they were up 21-17.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough road to hoe there regardless of how good they are because the division's so good. And we think they're down. And there's a reason why there was all the talk about Wilson maybe wanting to go somewhere else. Like, they're not as talented as they've been.
And we kind of knew this was coming in Seattle at some point. I think we had kind of been waiting for this moment because, he makes so much money. Ooh, bad injury, the Jags. DJ Shark out. Broke a fractured ankle, out indefinitely.
Oof.
That's a bad one. But you get, you have, Russell makes so much money. He's starting to command a big chunk of that salary cap now. And the things that they were able to do around him when he was just the 4th-round pick, not making a ton of scratch, now they don't have that depth. They don't have those players that they used to be able to supply and get around him. And that starts to wear out after a while. Like, we're going to see that in Kansas City eventually. Like, that catches up to all of these teams that pay the quarterback an exorbitant amount of money.
But I also think that there's something to be said for the complete failures on draft day in Seattle. The way you get around the huge cap issue with the quarterback, because every good team is paying a quarterback a lot of money, right? I look at, Green Bay's been able to put at least a half-decent team around Aaron Rodgers for a few years, right? Half-decent, not great, but half-decent. The Patriots for a long time, I know Tom was taking cuts, but they were able to put a team around Tom Brady, right? Drew Brees and the Saints had teams for years that they were able to put together. And now you've got this situation in Seattle. The one key that Seattle doesn't have that the rest of those teams had was Seattle just hasn't drafted well. You take Rashad Penny in the first round of the 2018 draft, and he's a complete bust. He's not even on your team anymore. What are they doing? Defensively, they've had some terrible draft picks.
That goes back to don't draft running backs in the first round, too. But, overall, I think Ryan is right that Nagy is the one that's in the crosshairs the most. He's got to beat the Lions this week, right? And after that, you've got Raiders, Packers, Bucks, Niners, Steelers, and Ravens. That's 6 big hitters, right? Like, we've seen this movie before, right? That's 6 big guys heading into a little petite girl's bedroom, right? Like, woman's bedroom.
Oh my God,
we've seen this one before.
Oh no!
Oh my God!
Oh, I can't believe you just said that.
They're gonna. The Bears are bad. They had 47 yards total.
It wasn't good. I don't know.
47 yards. Green Bay went 42 yards in 30 seconds.
They are the lowest scoring team in the NFL right now. They have 40 points for and 77 points against.
This goes against, though, to what, part of me wants to give Nagy a little bit of a break here in the sense that Nagy said this from the beginning. He said Fields isn't ready to play. By his actions, Dalton's the guy. Dalton needs to play. And yes, Dalton got hurt, and he's kind of been forced into this situation. But the Bears fans are getting what the coach knew all along, that the coach wasn't ready to play. Now, the comeback, I guess, is, okay, maybe change the game plan that fits the kid's strengths more than his weaknesses, and I just don't think he did that. That's fair criticism. But I don't think it's unfair to say the kid's not ready, the coach knew it, and the coach is trying to make this work with a guy who's not ready to play.
Here's the deal. When Dog the Bounty Hunter gets done looking for Brian Laundrie, he should probably head out and look for Allen Robinson next because he is nowhere to be found right now.
Look, all I'm going to say is the Bears are exactly who we thought they were. They are who we thought they were. That's why we took the damn field. They're a bad team, man. They're not good. That offensive line is paper thin. They've got a 40-year-old starting at left tackle. They've got a rookie quarterback back there that was absolutely shelled by a pretty good Browns defense this past week. Their wide receivers are absolutely nowhere to be found. They've got no running game. I don't know what they're doing offensively, and that falls on the head coach. He's an offensive head coach. We talk about the defensive issues with Minnesota and how Zim's a defensive coach. That's an offensive coach in Chicago, and he can't make it work with a young athletic quarterback. He had him sitting in the pocket getting shelled. Why aren't you running rollouts? Why aren't you running short passes? What are you doing?
I think that's fair criticism, and like I said, that's where he's totally rippable, and I think that's fair. I just think that it's also fair to say that he evaluated the quarterback as not being prepared or not being ready, and I think we're seeing that come to fruition.
But he still has rolled out Andy Dalton for 2 weeks too. It's not like that's world beating, And part of this goes back to it as hard as it is. Like, it goes back to Trubisky. You move up in the draft and take the wrong guy, and they're still paying for it. Like, I mean, you look at their drafts, like, they just don't have the capital. Even last year, they made a pick in the first and second round. They didn't pick again until the fifth round.
It's true.
And then they had, Rick Spielman special with 3 6-round picks, but there's no, you know what I mean? Like, there's you look at their list and you're like, who the hell are these guys, that they drafted?
Fair. Yep, that's true.
I think a conversation that we don't have enough about these kinds of teams, and I know we want to get back to the coach fired thing in a minute here. We're kind of going off on a tangent here.
No, we're okay, because this is all connected back to that, I think.
If you're drafting to fix your team for this year, you're not drafting properly. The draft is a lottery and a development process. You're picking guys that you think 2-3 years down the road, this is a guy who I think could fit into my starting roster, hopefully, or fit into a depth piece, hopefully, and pan out that way. But if you're hoping that 5th-round pick is going to be the guy that saves your team, you're not drafting right. And to sell out and to not have as many chances in the draft and to trade up for a quarterback who may or may not start day one that you hope can but isn't ready, and you're not willing to change anything for him, that's a systemic issue with your team and your front office. And we're seeing that play out in Chicago.
Right, but and like I understand what you're saying, right? Like, about not drafting for this year, but it's not just this year's draft, right? You go backwards and go
sure.
2020, they had no first-round picks. They picked twice in the second round, and then again, 3 in the 5th, 2 in the 7th. Like, that's not the way to build a team.
Right. So you take a team that was
with a bunch of 5th-round picks.
You take a team that was pretty good in 2018, right? That looked like they were on the upswing with a really good defense. The defensive coordinator leaves. They sell out trying to load up that team in the draft, and now they've mortgaged their future on guys that haven't panned out. Right? This is the one thing that for as much crap as I give Green Bay, they've done this pretty well, where they draft guys for where they project they're going to need, right? The New England does this too, and I think that it's the hallmark of a great organization is there's always the next guy up. There's always another guy coming up, and it's because they can project that need over years rather than trying to draft for next year.
Well, how good have the Packers line drafts been?
Exactly. They have not had a bad offensive line for as long as I've been watching football.
I mean, and they've had some bad offensive linemen. They've had guys that didn't hit, but they've had some really good. I mean, look, this week they started their 3rd-string left tackle, and he had 0 pressures.
Yeah, Elton Jenkins was what, a 3rd-round pick last year?
Yeah, but right, and they chipped and they did stuff to help and all that, but people were not as what's the word I'm looking for? People were not as optimistic about the line, but they played really well last week. But going into that, people were nervous, and they did everything that they needed to do.
I think that's the whole key, right? You hit on that. That's when you look at how teams are great and how they stay great. They just know how to hit those lineman draft pieces, and they know how to make their first and second round picks be contributors right away. Like, I think that's one thing you can say. This is what made the Vikings competitive in the 90s under Denny Green. Like, people like to rip Denny Green. They were good drafters under Denny Green. Like, they always took players that could do things. Their line was always good. They always had first-round talent that could deliver. They rarely ever busted. And that's why they were able to maintain 10 straight playoff appearances. And that's why you wonder why it's so inconsistent now. Well, there's your reason. It's inconsistent because you're not able to consistently hit in rounds 3 through 5, and your day one guys, your first and second round guys, aren't guaranteed to be successful like they were in the past. And that's been the Bears' problem. A first round pick like Fields, whoever they took in the second round, those are guys that need to be contributors fairly quickly. And I don't know if that's possible right now under the current situation.
Well, and I will say this too. Like, I get the idea of guys need to be developed, and they're not ready right away, but you want to see more than what they got this week.
And I think you touched on that a little bit with the third stringer for Green Bay on the offensive line, right? You alter your system, you alter your plan, you alter your offense to try and help them succeed, right? You chip, you give them help, you give them space. If you don't believe your quarterback's ready, but you have to have him start because your other guy's hurt, you have to have a plan in place so that he succeeds. You can't just roll him out there as though he's going to be a plug and play for the other guy. It doesn't work that way in the NFL. You have to make changes. And that to me is the ultimate failure of Matt Nagy in this, and why I kind of lay last week at his feet more than Justin Fields is, yeah, you want Fields to play better, but it's the head coach's job, who's been there for a few years, to know what he's going to be looking at and to make changes to the game plan to suit his quarterback who's going to be under center.
I agree. And I think that I think Nagy makes good sense because, I just think the fans have absolutely thrown the towel in on Nagy. It's not as bad as other situations where you do have a lot of first-year coaches in bad programs. I don't think they're ready to throw in the towel on some other guys yet, but I think Nagy, the fans, it's been 4 or 5 years. I think they've seen enough, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's that guy. Like O'Brien. We knew when O'Brien was going to get fired last year because we knew the fans had thrown in the towel. The team had seemed to throw in the towel. Like, that was kind of it, and I think that's what's happening here, I think. Let me ask you this, Zach. Green Bay gets the huge win on the road on Sunday Night Football. They beat the Niners. Are they
Looks
back?
great.
Were they ever gone?
No, but they lose that game to the Saints 38-3, and I think everybody kind of immediately took that as sort of shock and surprise. I'm not saying that we were ready to write them off at this point, but we certainly didn't have them as a top 5 team. Are we ready to think they're in that stratosphere of teams that can get to the NFC Championship game, that top 5 teams?
Well, yeah, I think you can easily make an argument to say they're a team that'll play in the NFC Championship, and they have their flaws. I think we all know what they are, right? Like, they're not a great defensive team, but they do a lot of things well on offense that can mask some of that, and they have to come up with turnovers. They have to come up with getting the ball out. That's who they are.
And Rodgers looked like Rodgers kind of looked like the old Rodgers, like maybe all that stuff from the offseason and all the not playing in the preseason. Like, maybe that's starting to all kind of shake out, and we got to see like vintage Rodgers on Sunday because he was brilliant for a good chunk of that game.
Yeah, especially the end. The end is what's going to get a lot of attention there, but it really was a complete game effort for Rodgers. He looked good the entire time. Which, you couldn't say that about the first couple of weeks. There were definitely times we were wondering if he was a little shaky. He looked like he was kicking off some rust, but he looked like an MVP type player on Sunday. He looked really good.
Well, let me ask you this: compare the performance from Rodgers to what we saw from Mahomes the last couple of weeks. I'm not saying panic on Mahomes. But there are some things that are a little disturbing. Am I right, Zach? Your thoughts on Mahomes? Ryan, you go first, then Zach on Mahomes.
Yeah, I just think that Pat Mahomes right now is playing like a guy who's been going to the casino every weekend and just winning everything and suddenly he's not winning anymore. He's just busting. The gambles he's taking aren't paying off. The big plays that would normally break off of the kinds of plays he's trying to make are flipping on their head, and they're becoming turnovers and bad plays. And I think that when you get into a situation like that, you've just got to slow down and re-examine. And I don't know if this is a Chiefs offense that allows him to do that. So, I mean, that's going to be on the coaching staff to kind of get him right.
Well, I think we talk about taking risks and stuff, but he's taking unnecessary risks.
For sure.
Right? You look at he throws a little no-look pass last week in the first quarter. It's behind the wide receiver, tips off the wide receiver's hands, and gets intercepted. And there was zero need to throw a no-look pass. Like, nobody was even... Right? He wasn't looking anyone off. He just decided to do it because that's what he does, and it gets all the hype, and then, boom, interception. And that's the stuff I've been pounding on, because, and I think part of it is, like, I really go, like, we saw Brett Favre do this kind of stuff for years, right? Taking chances with the ball, forcing it in, trying to do too much, and it always came back to bite him. And it's like, I've just been waiting for it to happen with Mahomes, and now it really is.
Is it something that are you concerned about it? Is it something that you think, it's a 2-week blip on the radar, they're still going to win 10, 11, 12 games? Or is this something that we need to keep an eye on?
They're still going to win 10, 11, 12 games, but it's still a major talking point because it's going to happen in an important time. Right? It's going to happen in a playoff game.
Right.
And then it's a big deal. Right? You can't start a playoff game like they started the first half this week.
I agree. I'm a little concerned. I'm concerned because everything just seems a little off with Kansas City. Now, they rebuilt their entire offensive line in the offseason. That's a thing. But, they've been to 2 straight Super Bowls, and this is, again, a lot of teams get a little big for their britches. A lot of guys want some, contract extensions. A lot of guys start to feel their oats a little bit, and things get, guys get fat and sassy. It's just how this works, right? They just get all super jazzed up about what they've done, and the motivation to stay good is hard to sustain. It's just really hard to sustain. Sometimes you got to get punched in the face a little bit, and I wonder if we won't see this a little more often, especially with how good this AFC West looks like it's going to be. Both Wests look incredible right now, but like Kansas City is chasing a 3-0 Vegas team, a 3-0 Denver team, who I admit might be a little bit of a phantom, and also a Chargers team that just beat them in Arrowhead. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of gimmies in that division this year like maybe there had been in the past.
Yeah, I think really the biggest concern, if you're looking at the Chiefs right now, it's not their offense, right? They've scored 33 and then 35 and then 24 in 3 straight games. I mean, those are pretty good numbers, right? Those are games that you hope that you can win with those kinds of scoring numbers. But they've given up 29, 36, and 30. Right, that their defense after giving up 30 points to the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, their defense has completely fallen apart. They've got no coverage, they've got no pass rush, they're not stopping the run. This is a major problem for Kansas City right now.
They're not playing complementary football.
Not at all.
Well,
and I mean, let's be real. I mean, Zach, you know something about that right now with the way that your team's been playing. I mean, you just can't win games if you're giving up short fields and then giving up a bunch of points. You're just not going to win games like that.
Yeah, it seems like the Chiefs are content to we're fine if you score because it just gets us the ball back. But it's not. This is not, the NBA where you can just outshoot a team with threes. You have to be able to get stops.
Right.
They're just not getting enough.
Madden.
Yeah, they're not getting enough stops, and then when they do struggle a little bit on offense, right? They don't put up 50. Then it puts them in a tough spot.
It's something to keep, like I said, something to keep an eye on throughout the season because, I mean, I agree with you, Zach. I think they're still going to win 10, 11, 12 games. I still think they're one of the best teams in the league. But the road to the Super Bowl, the road to the AFC Championship game is going to be paved with landmines the entire way. There's not going to be a lot of easy weeks. And again, they're finding out a lot of what like Tampa's finding out. And Tampa knew this too, but you're going to get everybody's best shot every week. That's just what happens when you become like really, really good. And you can't just show up and expect to win. You can't just expect to do whatever you want and have it come out your way. You got to play really well. And, the coach goes to the hospital at the end of the game last week. Not that I haven't heard anything about that. I hope everything's good there. But, it just feels like, man, nothing's going right so far for 3 weeks for the Chiefs.
And it gets tougher for them too. We talk about defensive struggles. You have kind of a get right game against Philadelphia this week, but that's a team that can move the ball a little bit when they get things rolling. You get Buffalo the week after that. You've still got Tennessee. You've still got Green Bay. You've got the Raiders twice. You've got Dallas on the schedule. I mean, these are not games that if you're struggling defensively that you're going to want to be in. Granted, their offense is going to keep them in a lot of these games, but man, that defense has got to step up if they want to be, better than a 6-loss team at the end of the year.
I also do think they're very much, and don't get me wrong, like a lot of teams are like this, but if their quarterback is not there, that team is in a world of hurt. I feel like,
yeah, they can't take an injury there under any circumstances. Maybe,
and don't get me wrong, most teams can't take an injury there, right? Yep. But they're so reliant on it. They're so,
Well, the game changes when he's not in. It's not like you can run the same offense. Like you can't.
But even when he's on the field and he's not playing well, I mean, he may as well be injured, right? If he's just going to go out there and throw picks and play reckless, like Zach is talking about, why are you on the field, right? What difference does it make if you're on the field if you're going to actively hurt your team, even if you're a great quarterback like Patrick Mahomes?
Well, Patrick Mahomes not playing well is still better than,
Would you rather have that or Zach Wilson?
Well, there's that.
Hey, you know what? Speaking of guys who are playing well, I got to give it to Kirk Cousins. I mean, they're 1-2, but it isn't his fault. His numbers statistically are as good as anybody's in the league through 3 weeks. Ryan, you've been a Kirk guy.
Not really,
minus
but
the vax,
I see your
minus
point.
The vax thing, minus the whole vax thing, and the fact that his family's weird thing. He has played really well though through 3 games. I have to give him that.
If they find a way to pull it off against Arizona and they're a 2-1 team, we're talking about an MVP type season for Kirk Cousins. He's in that conversation, and if they beat Cleveland this week and he puts up big numbers again, he probably is in that conversation anyway. But I mean, that's the kind of season he's having right now, and good for him. I mean, I doubted him, but I mean, I kind of owe him an apology a little bit for some of the things that I've said about Kirk Cousins.
So you're saying you're going to apologize to him right now? It's an apology segment. You said you had other apologies to make.
I'm not going to sit here and apologize to Kirk yet because they are still a 1-2 team, and there's still other things that he could have done in those games. They're not his fault, but there are things he could have done. I do need to apologize to the Las Vegas Raiders.
Okay. I like it.
That's great. Let's go.
Let's get this apology going.
I have, since the beginning of the season, continued to, and I still have my doubts. I don't think they're a great team, but I owe them an apology. The Raiders are a good team. They're talented. They're better on defense than I thought they were going to be. I came into the year thinking that this was a good team that was in a great division that was going to struggle for wins, and here they are at the top of the division. So I owe them an apology. I said that they probably wouldn't win 6 games. I'm eating that a bit right now. They're halfway there through 3 weeks. I owe them an apology a bit. So I'm going to sit here and I'm going to eat crow and apologize to the Silver and Black and Raiders Nation and just win, baby. And that's that. So my buddy Newey can stop bugging me about it. There's this apology. It's all he's going to get until he gets my money for them winning more than 6 games.
Oh, that's going to be soon.
Yeah, it might be week 6.
What's been the key? Has it been just David Carr? I mean, has it been Henry Ruggs? Looks like he's a better player. Like that's been a big part of this too. What's been the key?
The key is
great coaching.
It's consistency and it's defensive football. I mean, they shut down. I mean, the Ravens were a hospital squad week one, but they shut them down. They beat a Steelers team who I think we're seeing really isn't very good on offense, and they held them to 17 points. They beat the Dolphins in overtime. I mean, it's the second overtime game they've won this year. This week, I think they get a real test in LA. So we're going to see if this apology holds up after this week. But I mean, they're a good team, not a great team, who is doing the things they need to do to win a game. They're playing defensive football, and they're winning when they need to win.
The thing is after the Chargers, they get the Bears, the Broncos, the Eagles, and the Giants. Yeah. I mean, they could be in a really good spot in a couple weeks.
Yeah, their schedule's super favorable. I mean, you get to the end of the year too. The toughest games on their schedule left are Dallas and Cleveland and Kansas City. And
yeah,
those are
Kansas City twice. Yeah,
yeah. So those 4 games. I mean, that's where you're gonna tell. And then I guess you get that last game against LA in the Death Star. But I mean, you get the Colts and the football team and the Bengals. Man, this is a team that may only lose 3 or 4 games just based on their schedule.
Washington really should just be called the football team. I mean, that's the best thing ever.
I hate it so much.
Football team.
I hate it so much. It makes me sound like a
the
dork.
Dance team as opposed to the chess team. No, we're gonna play the football team. It'll be great. I love it. I'm glad you're apologizing to Vegas. Good job, John Gruden. Way to get things done. I'm rooting for the Raiders. Want to see it happen.
And good job, Derek Carr. I mean, he's just playing really well.
Carr's playing well, and Carr's fun to watch. Like,
and
hitting some big plays.
As a Vikings fan, I need to eat crow a little bit on Daniel Carlson.
Yeah, you need to eat crow. You and Zim. Full apology to Daniel Carlson.
He's playing great. He's playing great.
Makes you
That's
feel
all
like
I intend to say about that.
Makes you feel better about maybe you should stick with a kicker.
Hey, they did. And Greg Joseph came out and drilled 6 last week. So
apology accepted. That's all there is. All right, where do we take it from here, guys? Any other games stick out to you? Any other teams that you kind of think like, oh, through 3 games, I'm either really concerned or I'm really surprised or I'm really happy? Where are we at?
I mean, the Bills turned it on this week.
Bills look like they're back on track. I agree with you 100%.
We talked about the Giants being a bit of a dumpster fire. The Jets are not far behind.
Jets look really bad. Jets may not win a game.
You know,
that's a rough assessment, but I don't know if I could disagree.
They got the Falcons in 2 weeks.
I don't know if Zach Wilson can beat the Falcons.
Falcons just beat the Giants.
They've got the Falcons. Well, wow, they beat the Giants. They still have the Texans and the Jaguars on the schedule. They're going to win a game.
I'm not sure. I think they might have the 32nd best quarterback in the league, and that's including Justin Fields. He might stink. But there's a chance Zach Wilson stinks.
We talk about looking for flashes in guys. Is there anything we've seen so far that leads us to believe that Zach Wilson has it at all, and is at all ready for the NFL? Has there been a throw or a play or any kind of stat that demonstrates that he's shown readiness to be starting in the NFL at all?
No,
100% not. No way. He looks overmatched, and the Jets are doing it again. Another classic horrible quarterback job because there's no veteran presence behind him. There's no ability to pull him out of a game and let him sit and watch. So he's basically in there getting the shit beat out of him every single game. He's throwing a buttload of picks. I mean, it looks like he has no command. It looks like a disaster. Waiting.
Do you know how many points the Jets have scored this year?
Not a lot.
Yeah, just throw a number out there.
It's low. It's like 20.
20, yeah, 28, 25.
Yeah, Zach hit it right on the nose. They've scored 20 points this year.
That's less than 7 a game. That's less than 7 a game.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the first week, but I know they had 6 against the Patriots, and they got shut out last week. So
it's just, I mean, really, just a grease fire is the most charitable way to describe this team.
I'm concerned.
Wow.
I think Zach Wilson might stink. And I don't understand why the Jets felt the need to be married to him on draft day. Like, I understand maybe you wanted a quarterback, but they were so like, all right, Lawrence is going number 1. We're going to plant our flag in the ground and get Zach Wilson. Why not like let that play out and maybe take some options, maybe entertain some trade calls where you could slide down and acquire more talent? I never understood this logic or this philosophy, especially with a new defensive head coach. I can't imagine Robert Saleh. I mean, I'm sure he had input on this draft. I have to believe he did. Otherwise, why take the job? But you give yourself no leverage on draft day and no leverage to negotiate. It just feels like such a bungled operation from the very beginning.
I mean, you could have traded down and gotten someone like Micah Parsons or Patrick Surtain and completely changed the face of your defense. And suddenly your quarterback has a little bit more room to work with when he's playing.
Well, we were talking about how well the Jags were playing, but looks like their lead is about to evaporate. I kind of, I bet you Herb wishes he kicked the field goal right now.
I bet he does. Bengals have sort of figured it out. They're driving here in the second half. It's still trailing though, so the Jags are still leading. But
I could use a touchdown throw to Jamar Chase here. I'm not going to lie to you. My wallet could use a touchdown to Jamar Chase.
Then you talked about how you were big time over the weekend. Oh, look at me! I'm making paper on the.
I am. I'm just saying. You roll the dice every week, and you see. I bet big on Jamar Chase this week. He's my MVP slot on FanDuel, and got to tell you, could really use a touchdown to Jamar Chase right now.
Can I just say this for the record, Zach? While I have you here. I saw a picture of Ryan from Sunday's football game. Face paint. Are you in or you out?
Ryan painted his face for the Sunday football game.
I went to the Vikings game.
He sure did.
He looked doing it again. By the way,
he looked like a little bit of a cross between Ultimate Warrior and like Demolition Smash. Like I couldn't figure out what exactly he was going for, but. It's very purple and it's very dark and it was on his face. Your thoughts?
It's like he's like David Putty. He's a face painter.
Went with the Chris Hovan eye paint.
Yeah.
So many places to go.
I can't say that I approve here.
I did the Ultimate Warrior a couple of years ago. When I went to a game, I did the Ultimate Warrior face paint.
Was there ever a thought of just going to the game and sitting there and watching it?
Well, I did that too.
Anything else to it? Not doing anything else hysterical to it? Nothing.
What kind of fun is that?
Were you in nosebleeds or were you like front row?
I was technically in the nosebleeds, but I will not divulge where I actually sat for the game. I had a friend that may or may not have come to the game as well, and wandered around and ended up in seats that I did not pay for.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of
They're not going to take those seats. Those are your seats now.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel like if it's one thing, if you're down in the front row, maybe it's a little more acceptable than, up in section 900.
I did have somebody tell me that I looked terrifying at the game, though.
You look terrifying in the picture that I saw.
As I said, did that have anything to do with the face paint, though?
That's a great question. That remains to be seen.
Let me, I know that, Zach, you go to some Packer games throughout the year because you being an owner. There's not a lot of face painting Packer fans, right? Just a lot of shirtless or camouflage or just heavily drunken Packer fans that pee in sinks.
A lot of neon orange. A lot of cheese heads. Not a lot of face paint.
Big face painting tradition there in Packerland.
There is a heavy tradition of drinking and peeing in the sink. That's a big tradition, but there's not a lot of face painting.
The peeing in the sink stuff is overblown. There's 8,000 more bathrooms than there used to be. That is not. I have not seen someone pee in the sink at any of the games I've been to.
It's good to see that people have cultured up a little bit out there. That's what's nice to see. It's big time. It's huge.
And maybe it's just because I'm sitting in the owner seats. I don't know, but
That's just it. You get your own private bathroom there in the owner seats, right? You don't even have to go up and mingle with the masses. Zach just can't even. No comment on that. That's fair. That's very fair. All right, guys, let's get to the eliminator, the elimination chamber. But first, I want a caveat before we get into our eliminator talk, and we've kind of already touched on it. I think we need to come up with a new spot. Yes, we have the eliminator, but I also think, like, I think back to my days of watching pro wrestling. There's the jobber, but not just the regular Iron Mike Sharp, Brooklyn Brawler, I'm talking the jobber who, like, would win against the jobbers, but then lose to the really good wrestlers, like the Coco Bewares and in the Tito Santana run. We got to come up with a team that fits the enhancement talent spot. I think I got a good nominee for it. Somebody who makes the really good person look good, but also can get a move or two in. Who's our Elimination Chamber nominee?
I think we all agreed it was the Giants, right?
yeah, I think we were debating between the Giants. We talked about the Lions. The Colts and Jags came up, but that division's so bad we feel like somebody was going to win. So we were debating as we talked between the Giants and the Lions.
I feel good about the Giants piece, but go ahead, Zach.
I was going to say, Tim, you were kind of advocating for the Lions.
Yeah, I was. I started there. And the reason why is this. They're 2 games back already of Green Bay, maybe 3 if you factor in the tiebreaker, right, of losing the game on Monday night. And yes, they are competitive, but they still don't win these games. And they lost in obviously the worst possible way, right? They lost on a 66-yard field goal to Justin Tucker and the Ravens, but they gave up a 4th and 19 to get into that position in the first place. And that's just an appalling disaster. You can't let that happen. Now, granted, you roll the dice most of the time on a 66-yard field goal, but we're talking indoors with one of the greatest kickers of all time. There's a chance that goes in.
Yeah, I think that I would. My arguments with the Giants were just, we looked at their schedule, like, we don't see many wins coming.
I agree with you.
They're broken at quarterback. They're not very good at running back. The owner's getting booed. We don't know how good the coach is. And I think that the Lions have played well enough in 3 halves of football that they maybe are not. I mean, I'm not convinced that the Bears are beating the Lions this weekend either.
No, and I think that's the comeback, right? Is that if the Lions beat the Bears and they have the same record, I mean, then who could say?
Right.
Right? Yeah. And then also, like, are we convinced that the Vikings will beat the Lions twice?
I don't think you can be convinced of anything with the NFC North right now.
Other than the fact that we think Green Bay is good. Like, we're convinced that
I think they're good, but I don't know that I would sit down and go, yep, that's an automatic win, that's an automatic win, that's an automatic win.
Right, I kind of agree. So I guess for those reasons, you're right. I don't think I can put Detroit there in hindsight. But I thought at least we should discuss it, right? That they had kind of hit this place of, like, okay, they're on the radar. They haven't been able to close these games out. And Dan Campbell, for some of the things you're seeing that you might like, you see a lot of crap you don't like too. And a lot of stuff that doesn't feel like it's any different than previous regimes.
For sure. So, well, I mean, we'll see. I think we put the Giants in, and then,
so does that mean the Lions become the Tito Santana of the league? They win this week's Coco Beware Tito Santana Award?
I was going to put Pittsburgh there.
Oh, I like that. Okay. So, by the way, which jobber should we go with? Do we go with Tito? Do we go with Coco Beware? Where do we go?
Crash Holly.
The Blue Meanie.
The Blue Meanie. The Too Cold Scorpio. I think all of those are good.
Scotty Too Hottie.
That could be something. I like Scotty Too Hottie. That might be a good one. Let's go Tito Santana. I'm gonna go with it. The Tito Santana Award for this week, the Jobber of the Week, the enhancement talent. So you think it could be Pittsburgh? Pittsburgh is the Tito Santana of our league.
I think right now when you beat them, their defense is good. But their offense has been atrocious.
Yeah.
When you beat them, it still feels like a big win right now. But when we come to Week 18 of the NFL season, I don't know how big of a win beating the Steelers will be.
It's a fair question.
And of course now I'm sticking my neck out there because Green Bay plays Pittsburgh this week. But that's where I'm leaning right now. I mean, I just think that they're not good offensively.
I agree.
I mean, they have. I think they've only scored like 50 points, and they've scored on defense, and special teams. So I just think that they're. I think I said to you guys earlier, they're a 14-2 defense paired up with a 2-14 offense.
Yeah, it's not good. I agree, and I'm the Roethlisberger supporter. You guys give me shit on Twitter about this all the time, and I understand that I'm kind of maybe the last of the Roethlisberger guys too. I still don't think he's the worst quarterback in the league, but he hasn't played well. I'll give you that. He has not played well. It has not been good. It has not been fun to watch. It's a little tough to watch indeed.
And it's been like this for a while. I mean, I think it was 2 years ago he was. If you had him in fantasy football, you could not start him on the road. He was horrible on the road. And last year he really fell off the table. And so I don't know that. I mean, he's not coming back. They drafted a running back in the first round. They have some major issues to address there. And
feels a bit on par with the Atlanta mistake of taking Kyle Pitts at number 4, right?
Oh God. Feels like my mistake of taking Kyle Pitts in fantasy football.
Me too. God damn it.
So,
frustrating.
I don't know. I think that it's getting late early in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, this one's kind of a must-win. They need to kind of get on track here a little bit, and because Baltimore, they snuck that one out. I don't know if Baltimore's good, but they're 2-1, and I don't know if Cleveland's good. But they're 2-1, and I don't know if the Bengals are good, and they're 2-1. So you can't be falling behind too far with these teams.
Right. Their division doesn't have any. The Bengals are better than they were. They don't have any easy ones. Their schedule's tough. So I think it's time, right? They gotta. It's tough to say must-win game on the road against a non-conference opponent, but it's getting there early.
I agree. All right, everybody. Time for the power rankings. We were able to cover a lot of ground today, and obviously we named the top 5 teams in the league every week according to our thoughts and observations. Number 5, Zach.
So, in sticking with my theme here, of just a team that I want to recognize, I think we need to talk about the Chargers and that big win in Kansas City. We haven't really touched on it a ton today, but it looked the part. Herbert looked the part.
He did.
He showed a lot of poise in the way they drove down and won that game, and I think that their time may be coming here. Right, they've got some weapons at receiver, and so I really like what they're doing. They're in a tough division, and I think they're going to win a good number of games. They may not win their division, but that's a good team that's on the come up.
I'm not sure the coach is smart. Like he was pretty baffling in his decision making down the stretch. Now I admire the chutzpah of going for it. I admire the kind of some of the guttiness of it. But man, oh man, there were some just really baffling decisions down the stretch. Now he's a young coach. You got to give him a break for that. And you're right, Herbert was good. But I'm concerned that the coach might hold them back a time or two this year. Ryan, who's your 5th?
My 5th team this week, I'm going to go with the Las Vegas Raiders.
3-0 Vegas Raiders. I like that.
Just got to give them some recognition. I don't know if they're going to be in my top 5 the entire season, but for right now, got to give them the recognition. Got to follow through on the apology. They're going to get my number 5 spot.
You know what? Apology accepted. John Gruden, Mike Mayock, they're gladly accepting your apology. Nice job. Number 5, I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills. they got themselves back in the mix. I think winning these last 2 weeks is convincing fashion that they did. Makes me a believer again after the first week loss to Pittsburgh. I'm starting to believe that maybe they're better than we think and that they're back on track and maybe we can start to buy Josh Allen again. So give me Buffalo at 5. Number 4. Ryan, why don't you take number 4?
Sure. I'm going to go a similar spot with you with number 4. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills here. For all the same reasons you said. I mean, they're defensively they look better. Offensively, they hit their stride. I think that's exactly what you want to do if you're trying to shake off the rust of the offseason and hit the ground running and get back to the playoffs here if you're Buffalo.
Zach, what do you think?
This is where I'll take my Las Vegas Raiders. They're playing well. They're winning games, and they're going to. We talked about it, like their schedule is not a world-beating schedule early, so they could get out to a really hot start and try to run away from the division a little bit and make those Chiefs play catch up, and that'll be really interesting down the stretch. Is if the Raiders get out to the big lead, and the Chiefs have to try to reel them in, what happens?
I'm also going to take the Las Vegas Raiders here at 4. I like what they're doing, and they keep winning. And as long as you keep winning, you're going to stay in the power rankings. That's where I see it. Like where they're going, like what they have. I'm going to stay with them there as well. Number 3, Zach.
I went back and forth on this one, but I'm going to go with Buffalo here. Despite their loss earlier, I think that team can play really good defense. Right? They've only given up 44 points in 3 games. I'm convinced that the offense is good, and their division's not very good. Right? Miami is struggling right now. I think New England's still a year away, and the Jets are putrid. So they're going to rack together a lot of wins, and if Kansas City continues to struggle, then you're talking about Buffalo with home field advantage, which would be huge. Huge.
I like that. Number 3, Ryan.
My number 3 team here is a bump up from last week. I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys here. They've allowed less than 70 points. They've scored 90 points. They're 2-1. They look really good against Philadelphia last week. They're moving the ball really well. They seem dangerous. I don't know if I'm ready to call them one of the best teams in the NFL yet all the time, but I mean, they look really good. They look like they're going to be a dangerous team, and that they've kind of gotten it together a little bit. Dak's playing the best football of his life right now.
The win was pretty convincing. That one impressed me a little bit. Not that I think Philadelphia is great, but I thought Philadelphia was the challenger to them in the division, and the fact that they waxed them as much as they did, I thought was impressive. It said a lot. I'm going to take at number 3, the Arizona Cardinals. They're 3-0. Kyler continues to play well. They're doing what they need to do to keep winning, and as long as they in a tough division, if they can keep winning, I'm in. This is going to be a really tough season to watch. Number 2, Ryan.
My number 2 team is Arizona. I think offensively they're just super creative. I really like what they're doing defensively. They fly around the field. They're just super fast. I really like the way that they play both sides of the ball. And special teams, if you've got a kicker who can hit as far out as Prater can hit, you can't count him out from any range. I'm going to go with the Cardinals at 2.
Zach?
I don't even have the Cardinals ranked this week. And so I'm just going to touch on that real quick. Like, I just don't know that they've beaten anyone that impresses me yet. The Titans, the Vikings, the Jags. I think, we'll really see the next 2 weeks here with the Rams and 49ers, and then the Browns even the week after that where they're at. So I may owe them an apology here shortly, but I don't have them there. I have Tampa Bay at 2. Coming off the loss, I still look at them and go, they've played good football. They've played good teams. Their defense has struggled a little bit, which has surprised me. But if we've played the Cowboys, which obviously Ryan loves, and they played the Rams, who I think are still to come on most of our lists here. So I think Tampa Bay is still good, and I trust them at the end.
I'm with you on Tampa Bay. And the fact, I think Ryan better be preparing another apology segment next week for Tampa Bay, because I think not having them in the top 5 is a disgrace. I'm just going to come right out and say it's an absolute disgrace to take Tom out of the top 5, because I'm pretty sure that's what you're doing. Tom is in the top 5. They lost to the best team in the league, and I admit it. I didn't think they were the best team. They proved it. They earned it. They're the best team in the league right now and playing fantastic. But Tom is not chopped liver. And they're playing well. And offensively, they are scoring. Defensively, I agree with you. I think it's a dicey situation. I'm a little surprised at kind of how much trouble they've had defensively. I was really surprised at how much trouble they had defensively in that game against the Rams. I mean, Stafford looked unbeatable, looked unstoppable at times. And it just felt like the defense didn't have an answer. And for Todd Bowles, who I think we all agree is a pretty good defensive coordinator, for him to have, and basically running back the same team, for him to have some of these challenges is a little bit concerning. No question about it. But Tampa, to me, is still the second best team in the league. Number 1, I think we might be unanimous on this one. But Ryan, I'll let you make it official.
Yeah, for the third week in a row, I'm going to take the LA Rams. Look, I don't want to disrespect the Bucs. I'm just taking the opportunity to talk about some other teams that I think are pretty good. We talk a lot about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in this podcast, and that's fine. We've got Tim over here who's going to slurp Tom Brady every chance he gets.
That's
they're going to get their representation on the podcast. So I want to take the time to talk about some other teams that I think are pretty good. But I'm going to take the Rams here. They're the best team in football. They're scoring a lot of points. They're stopping people on defense. They're just going to knock the crap out of you, and then they're going to confuse the hell out of you on offense. So I'll take the Rams here.
And you're going to take the Rams as well, Zach?
I do. I think they've put the best resume on paper so far. I don't know that they're long-term the best team in the league, but they put the best resume on paper so far. And I just don't know if you can trust Stafford down the stretch. And they're going to take, presumably they're going to take a few lumps in that division at times. But, I think that, hey, right now they've got the wins, right? They beat the Bucs. They dismantled the Bears. The squeaking one out against the Colts is a little weird, but I think they went out and beat the team that we thought was the best team before, or at least you and I did, Tim. So
yeah, Ryan, you're absolutely right. Nobody ever talks about the Dallas Cowboys ever. They never get any run. When are they going to get a little bit of airtime in this world? Right? Unbelievable.
I'm just saying we've been doing this podcast for a year, almost a year and a half, and I feel like one of the teams we've talked about the least is the Dallas Cowboys. And when they're really good, I want to recognize it, and they've been playing really well, so I want to recognize Dallas.
Yeah, but there was nothing to talk about last year.
True.
Other than how bad McCarthy's clock management was.
That's true. But I do appreciate what they're doing this year. Like I said, I think Dak Prescott's playing the best football of his life right now.
It would be nice if Dak could pass the ball to CeeDee Lamb a few times this week.
Yeah, your wallet could use that, huh?
Well, I'm in a guillotine league, and I am trotting out a couple of nobodies at running back because McCaffrey is hurt. So I'm trying to squeak by for a week or two until he gets back.
So in wrapping up our pod, I want to get both of your opinions on the halftime show. It was announced today who it's going to be for the Super Bowl. Zach and I being a bunch of 90s kids, this is right up our alley. But Ryan, I'm sure you're a fan as well because I've been able to get you indoctrinated into the beauty of 90s hip-hop. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Mary J. Blige, Eminem, and Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar, honestly, don't care. Could care less. Love Mary J. Blige. Love Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg. Zach, your thoughts?
I'll be honest, I forgot about Dre. My only concern is what are they going to sing? Like,
what is school appropriate for them to sing?
Right. What can they put out there that's not going to be bleeped out and on the 5-second dump button every 2 seconds?
Yeah, they're going to need to figure that one out, because if you're not walking out there rolling Still DRE, or running the whole album, The Chronic 2, like you gotta roll some of that, right?
Right, and I'm sure they'll get creative and find some ways to turn it into a medley and and dip out when they need to dip out. But that's just my first initial thought was like, man, it's a lot of songs that you can't sing.
My concern is that's a lot of people. Like, and they're all going to want 10 minutes. Like, don't you feel like it's going to be like an hour-long halftime show? Because you got, Snoop and Dre have a lot of tunes they can sing together, so it makes sense to have them out there. But then, like, Eminem's going to probably want 5 seconds to Lose Yourself, and then we're going to have to listen to the real Slim Shady for 10 minutes, and then it's like, oh, for God's sake, and then here comes Mary J. Blige. And then before you know it, it's an hour long. It's going to take forever.
I was surprised that there was no, like, hype or build up to this. They're just like, hey, here it is. Like, did you know they were announcing the halftime show today?
I had no idea. It took me by surprise. And when Ryan told me about it earlier today, I was like, are you serious? Like, no big NFL. This doesn't feel like the NFL's way of doing things. Normally, they like to have a gigantic press conference and a big unveiling. We didn't see that here.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. The halftime show isn't why I watched the game anyway. Last year halftime hit and I ran to a craps table across the street, so across Fremont Street, and tossed dice for 30 minutes and it came running back. So I'm not there for the halftime show.
Oh, fantastic stuff, guys! I enjoyed it again as always. It's always fun to get you here to talk football. Again, if you want to listen to this pod and want to continue to support us, continue to share us out, rate us 5 stars. Like us, download it, whatever you want. Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast. I've seen us on audible.com. We're everywhere that you can get a podcast. Literally everywhere that you can get a podcast. So please go ahead and share us out. Send that in for us. We'd appreciate it. You can also find me, TimPodcast1 at yahoo.com. You can also hit me on Instagram at Mr. Tim Anderson or Tim Anderson Pod on Twitter. Find me at Facebook.com/TimPodcast. I would appreciate that very, very much. So, we'll pick up football next week. A lot of football to watch. Thank you, gentlemen. They're going to say thank you eventually. This is where we say now we're good.
Oh, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm ready for the after party.
Indeed. That's coming up next. The nightcap. We're going to sit back and continue to do that. But until next time, for Ryan, for Zach, this is Tim saying keep your head up, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out.